Okay, so this is the self-assessment on 5.0 in Algebra 2. Go ahead and I would recommend you pause the video and try to complete 1A through D, and then come back and I will go through them. So go ahead and pause it now and try it on your own. That's the best way to learn this versus just watching me do it. Okay, so on this first one, we have -9 to the 0 power. And so the 0 is applied to all of this. Anything to the 0 power turns into 1. So the answer is just 1. All right, on B, we have 3 to the -3rd power. A negative power brings it down. It's a reciprocal, so it moves down to the bottom of the fraction. And so it's 1/3 cubed. I'd be fine with that. Or 3 cubed, I kind of know that one in my head, is 1/27. Okay, on this one, first of all, 10 to the 0 power is 1. Anything to the 0 power is just 1. So you have 10 to the -3rd. The -3 power will bring it down to the denominator. And once you move it down, remember, it turns positive. So 1/10 to the 3rd, or I happen to know that 10 to the 3rd is 1,000. So 1/1,000. Okay, on D, this one's a little different. So it has this negative. Notice that the negative is kind of outside the fraction. So only the 5 is being raised to the 0 power. So the 5 to the 0 power becomes 1. All right, and so think of this like we have -1 over 2 to the -2. All right, that negative exponent right there is going to bring the 2 up. So it is going to bring it up here by the 1, the -1. So it's -1 times 2 squared. 2 squared is 4. And so you get -4. So that negative outside, I kind of like don't get it mixed up with everything until the very end. All right, let's now do the same thing with number 2. So go ahead, like I said, pause the video so you can do this on your own. You're going to be so much better if you do it on your own and then come back and watch me go over them after you've already thought it through. All right, so on this one, the negative exponent, remember, brings it down to the denominator. And once you've moved it, it is positive. And that's all we can do. All right, on B, this negative exponent on the 4 is going to move it up. And so now the 4 squared will move up to the numerator. And 4 squared is 16, so we can put 16W. Okay, on this one, there's multiple steps. The y to the 0 makes a 1. I go ahead and do that first. The order technically doesn't matter, but I like to just get rid of that right away. And then the 3 to the -2 will move to the bottom, and the x to the -5 will move to the bottom. Notice that once they've moved, their exponents are positive. All right, that 3 squared makes 9, so 1/9x to the 5th, or 1/3 squared x to the 5th. Okay, on D, once again, this p to the 0 makes 1. That's where I begin every time. All right, now I have this 8 to the -2. It moves down to the bottom because it was negative. Now look at the q to the -3 on the denominator right here. It has a negative exponent, so it moves to the top. So it's q to the 3rd up top. And then this r to the 5th, the exponent is not negative, so it does not move. It stays down here, r to the 5th. So I have q to the 3rd. 8 squared is 64, r to the 5th. Okay, let's do the same thing with number 3. Go ahead and pause the video. Try all of these. Do your best to see how far you can get them, and then come back and we'll go over them. So on this one, they have the same bases. If the same bases are multiplying, you can add the exponents. So we can do 4 plus -6, and we get 10 to the -2. Now a negative exponent, remember, moves to the reciprocal. So in this case, it moves to the bottom of a fraction, 1/10 squared, which 10 squared is 100. So it's 1/100. All right, on these, notice how the -5 is not in parentheses. It is not this. That would be a different situation. So first, the negative over negative can make a positive. So I'm going to write 5 to the 8th over 5 to the 4th. All right, these are the same base, and they're the same base in a fraction, so I can subtract the exponents. I can do 8 minus 4, and that gets me 5 to the 4th, which, if you happen to know that one, is 625, but either would be okay, 5 to the 4th or 625. All right, these are the same base, and so we can subtract them. You can think of it two ways. The first way you can do is just subtract 6 minus 7. You get -1, and then the negative exponent moves it to the bottom. And you could have a 1 on the bottom, y to the 1, but y to the 1 is just the same as y. Now, personally, the way I think of it is I see that that we're going to subtract, and I see that the larger number is down here. So what I do, I kind of follow this, but I'm skipping a few steps in my head. I do 7 minus 6. I know it's y to the 1. And if I visualize 6 y's on top and 7 y's on bottom, I know the remaining y that's left over is going to be on the denominator. And so that's just kind of how I do that one. But this is technically like the formal process right here. All right, this one right here is a power raised to another power. So when it's a power raised to another power, you multiply them. So 12 times 5 gives you 60, so it's w to the 60. All right, and last but not least is number 4. Go ahead, do the same thing. Go ahead and pause the video, work them out to the best of your ability, and then come back and start the video again and make sure you got the answers correct. All right, so this -3 goes to everything. I like to go ahead and distribute it first. Some people like to go ahead and move it to the denominator and then distribute, but it doesn't matter. You can distribute and then move to the denominator. It works both ways. So I get 10 to the -3, y to the -3. So the 10 to the -3 will move down to the bottom and be 1 over 10 cubed. And the y to the -3 will also move to the bottom because of that negative exponent. You can leave it like that, or 10 cubed is 1,000. So you can put 1 over 1,000 y cubed. All right. On this problem with the -4 over n, it drives me nuts when they put the negative just out to the side. I'm going to put it with the top number just to have a place for it to be. So when the negative is just out to the side like that, you could just put it on the numerator and not have it just kind of out there dingling. So now I'm going to take the 5th power to everything. So I have -4 to the 5th. Notice how I put it in parentheses and into the 5th. So they're both positive exponents, so I don't need to move them at all. I could leave it there if I want to simplify. -4 to the 5th. If you're doing something to the 5th power and it's negative, if you picture what we're doing here, these first two will make it positive. These two will be positive, but then you'll still have a negative. So in the end, if it's a negative to an odd power, you should have a negative answer. So I get -1024 over n to the 5th. But both answers are okay because they did say we could just simplify it. All right. So on this one, the 5th is going to get distributed to everything. 1 to the 5th over 2 to the 5th. K squared to the 5th. All right. 1 to the 5th is just 1. 2 to the 5th, we're just going to write down. When it's k squared to the 5th, it's a power to a power. You multiply them and you get k to the 10th. And if you happen to know that 2 to the 5th is 32, that's great. We're going to work on our powers and just kind of knowing some of the lower number ones in our heads. We won't know the bigger ones though. Okay, so here we have a negative exponent. I'm going to go ahead and distribute it first. So I get 6 to the -2, c to the -2 over 7 to the -2. All right, the 6 to the -2 moves to the bottom because it's a negative exponent. So does the c because it's a negative exponent. And then this 7 to the -2 moves to the numerator at the top because of the negative. So I end up with 49 over 36 c squared. Now another way people might do this one, just to show you, as another option that is also a great option, when you see the negative exponent to the whole parentheses, you can take the reciprocal of the parentheses and then take it to the positive. So this negative, I take the parentheses and I flip it all, and then it's squared. And then when I distribute, I get 7 squared over 6 squared c squared, which is the same answer. It just depends how your brain sees it better. So personally, I distribute first and then move everything, but some people like to go ahead and do the reciprocal and then distribute. It works either way.